I see the live now.
All
Very good.
right.
I see it now.
Well, as often happens, Hugh has declined to get any hints about what's on my mind before we begin. So I was thinking about how to enter into what's been on my mind lately, and there's a theme to it, of course. And I'll bring us in on a through a strange door, perhaps. On my mind are the related words, I think too often uttered, whatever, and also we'll just agree to disagree. So what comes up for you, Hugh, around whatever and or around? Let's agree to disagree. And bear in mind, folks, that this is Leadership Uncertain. That's the name of our podcast. And so we're talking today about a particular area of uncertainty that I've encountered a lot recently.
So it's funny to me. I was having a very curious conversation about bad emotions,
Hmm.
and I had the pleasure of sharing with my team on Monday during our all team meeting what's called a captain's message. And
Hmm.
basically, every Monday every Tuesday during our call, because I had found a way to delegate away all of the regular talking spots, I was left with no real opportunity to address the team, and that happened for quite some time. And then they invented a portion of time, maybe 3 minutes, that I get to talk about whatever I want to talk about to inspire folks. And I thought that was kind. And in this Tuesday's captain's message, the title was, "If it is here, it is a gift."
Hmm.
And so when I hear the first term was whatever, my initial reaction is, whatever, depending on how it is said, generally stinks of resignation.
Hmm.
It's rife with "I give up." Normally, it truly can be
Hmm.
it is possible to have a very neutral whatever, not inappropriate,
Yeah.
not impossible.
Would you like pumpernickel or sourdough bread? Oh, surprise me.
Whatever.
Whatever.
But strangely enough, you would say "surprise me." You don't actually say "whatever."
It's true. I think it probably has happened that someone has used whatever in that fashion. It certainly is not the most
Common.
common or at all a common use of that word.
Well, and I remember when I was learning Spanish and I was living in Medellin, Colombia, and the in Spanish, whatever translates can be translated in two ways. It can the easiest translation is "lo que sea," "lo que sea." It literally translate. I guess if we were going to translate it directly, it would be "lo" is kind of like direct. It's a direct object that indicates it. "Que" means that, and "sea" is the subjunctive verb of the subjunctive form of the verb "to be." So it's like it is, it is, but with like a assumption. It's not a term in the way we think in English necessarily, but it's kind of
Hmm.
if it were, or as it were, or that it were is probably
Hmm.
much closer to English. And the other way to say whatever is "a mí no me importa." It does not matter to me.
Mm.
And I was told by somebody when I used that term that it was actually grosero. It was rude to say that particular. I meant whatever. I don't care, and they interpreted it as being very rude. So
Yeah.
you're inspiring all of these traumatic adjacent memories. Um, let me answer your question more directly. So the reason I started with if it's here, it's a gift,
Mm.
is that there is no emotion and no expression that we have the ability to access that isn't at some point useful.
Mm.
So it is not that anything gets to be cast away or not used. Just recognize that there are applications for which it is useful and applications for which it may not be. Now, everything is context. So to avoid being a greasy consultant and, getting away from it depends, I will tell you instead that if that whatever, whether you are receiving it or you are saying it, serves your highest and best purpose, offer no resistance and see where it goes.
And when you say offer no resistance and see where it goes, what do you mean by that? What does that look like?
So let's play with that. Let's play with a couple scenarios. Are we receiving the whatever or are we giving it?
Let's pick one. Let's say you assign me a task and I say whatever.
Okay. So in this case, since I'm the one that's receiving the whatever, that to me is feedback. Now I have a choice to make. How much do I wish to engage and honor our connection by getting to the bottom of whatever else is really happening? Is, the unstated the objective. Or you could be having a period. You could be going through some kind of external pain event that has nothing to do with me, and all you need is silence and grace and the ability to go do the thing I asked you to do, no matter what your resistance. And you
Yeah.
get to go figure out your own soul. I mean, all of that could be at play. So, uh, depending on the nature of the moment, and sadly, it's very tough to do hypothetical
Yeah.
exercises with this, but it's fine. We're having fun. I would tell you, pick a lane based on if you're going to receive the whatever, how responsible are you able to be in this moment? Because if I receive a whatever and it is in an interaction that I truly honor with a person that I feel like I have an opportunity to connect with, whatever is a cry for help,
Mm.
potentially.
Yeah. Well, as often happens in our conversations, there are lots of avenues that are opening up in different directions. I'm gonna bring us back to the avenue opened by, if it's here, it's a gift.
Mm.
And when we're working with teams to train them to communicate and collaborate effectively, the teamification process has 8 principles, and the fifth of those principles is one of those principles from theater improvisation. Everything is an offer. And so here is as you put it, a gift. Here is this information in the form of a vacuum of information that that you can use in whatever way you choose.
Sure.
It is an offer of information, and you have cited a number of the forms of information that it might be, like, for example, a cry for help, or an expression of hopelessness.
Frustration, resignation, capitulation,
Mm-hmm.
depression,
Yeah.
exhaustion. Like these are all the beautiful layers that a really juicy whatever can give you
Mm.
if you're getting it from someone else.
Yeah. And the reason that this comes up, this along with let's just agree to disagree, is that I've been in a lot of organizations recently, and in the last couple of years, mine has been one where there are significant disagreements
Mm.
about how to proceed or how do we handle this, or in circumstances like this, what do we want to do? Do we offer this service? Do we not? Recently it came up with a client where the question was, how many clients can we take on at once? Can we take on an expedited service so that sales is not selling things that operations can't deliver on, and we're not disappointing customers, which has been at least a 5-year fight among them.
Hmm.
And what happens is they say things like whatever, or we'll agree to disagree, or they simply walk away without ever having reached any kind of resolution. And so for many years, there has been this resentment building between the folks in operations and the folks in sales, and also between all of them and folks in leadership who are uh, themselves not driving a resolution to this perennial conflict.
I've been teaching classes every other Tuesday for the last month, and I'm about to teach the last one next Tuesday in the field that I am uniquely gifted and singularly interested in.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the things I always try to bring attention to is you can't bring data to a values fight.
That's a wonderful expression.
Because as you were talking and you were telling me about all the things that people were disagreeing on, what I have learned after 25 years of fighting with people is that you can't you're not you're not going to reason your way logically and rationally through those kinds of fundamental challenges.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do is tactical.
Yeah.
And if we are having a tactical fight, it means that we have disconnected from a strategic inspiration that could give us opportunity for congruence.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
So
reminding me of a book that you have recommended to me. It's kind of one of those books that gets recommended around, the Start With Why book.
mm,
If we don't know why we're here, if we don't know what it is we're trying to accomplish, then we don't know what are the criteria by which we're going to make this decision. And so
well,
it becomes impossible to get past a loggerheads.
and sad. I don't mean to say it like this because the English is limited. I used to have fun with my friend Bill, who we'd always joke that we'd run out of English. So we just run out of English. What I'm about to say is paradoxical, and it's not the whole truth. But just hang on, okay? The tactic almost. Who cares what we're gonna do? Who cares?
Mm.
Really doesn't matter because if we are
Whatever.
having exactly, exactly. I'm glad you're with me. So, so what's beautiful about recognizing that in this moment, what strategy do we employ? What do we do? What do we sell? What do we not sell? Like all of that does not matter. Not right this minute. If you and I are fighting about what should be the next course of action, we have bigger problems to solve. And when I hear when I hear conflict like that, and especially if it's emphatic, like really animated conflict where there's a lot of frustration, it's a beautiful palette. Oh
Mm.
my gosh. You know the worst types of conflicts are the ones that don't even have enough energy left. They don't. There is so much apathy that you just choose a course of action and you're following it, but there's no actual investment and there's potentially even sabotage.
Yeah.
So where? Go ahead.
I mean, that's essentially where we've arrived when people say things like whatever and we'll agree to disagree.
Well, I will tell you that's the penultimate step where you have true, where the ground has become barren, is where you have compliance with no investment.
Mm. Mm. I love that expression, the compliance with no investment, because one of the things that's on my mind around this, right, is the in the description for this episode of this conversation that we have periodically, I talk about conflict that's unresolved that is rather than unsolved, right? In most of the cases where we're going to reach a whatever, the problems in our organizations, the problems in our relationships, they're not that simple. It's not as if we're necessarily going to come to a solution. And we can resolve the conflict effectively with agreement, with joy, with what was the word that you just used a moment ago? Was it commitment? I lost a little bit of track of the word that you had used, but we can come to resolution without coming to solution, even without coming to agreement.
I hate solutions. Yeah, because you stop thinking.
Mm,
Creativity dies when you solve the problem.
mm,
The magic of teamwork, the magic of the beauty of ideas flowing has everything to do with now we have something to focus on together. So for me, when I have it happens with my team, like they'll make fun of me or I will come at them pretty hard because I have a very strong idea of how some things should be done. But I have learned that the way you buy yourself the currency or buy yourself the relationship capital to walk away from a delegation is you make it somebody else's inspired problem to solve. And the
mm.
way you do that is you realize that I am not fighting you. Yes, we are disagreeing about how to look at this thing, but my relationship and my responsibility as the leader is to hold you close to my shoulder, and the both of us are looking at the problem. That's not us.
Mm.
Where we get into a lot of interesting ego battles and all sorts of nonsense that happens at these organizations is because people have become identified with their opinions. You know, a lot of times I'll
Yes.
say it in meetings, I'm married to my wife, not my opinion. So you bring it. You have to prove me wrong because I'm one of the best people in the world at what I
Mm.
do, and I'm not going to be shy about that, but I don't have to be an asshole about it either.
Prove
But
is a high bar.
but but you present a good enough case, and I will back down, and I will back you.
Mm.
My commitment is to backing the best idea. And if that idea happens to be yours, your idea is about to become mine. And we're about to have this idea together.
Right
And
on.
if it's good enough, you just earned yourself a new project to go work on. And it was your idea. So you can't complain to anybody that you have all this work because again, you're the one that create. But more importantly, you notice how we flip the energy behind the challenge, where why do we have conflict between people at work?
Right. Because
Like,
we, just as you say, right, our egos get involved in the things we want, the opinions we have, what is right, what isn't right, and we can very often feel threatened.
well, but let's look at the beautiful side of that. Imagine that people care about whatever, whether it's their job, whether it's
Mm.
their position, whether they care about something. Caring and the energy that comes with it is the currency. That's what's
Right on.
useful. Like, I will take any. I remember there was a beautiful, beautiful interview with Michael Phelps back in the days where we thought he was still sane and like, reasonable. And he was just eating 8,000 calories a day and being, a rabid uh, Olympian. He said, "You tease me and I will go faster. You tell me I'm doing great and I will go faster."
Mm,
He eats whatever you give him for lunch.
mm,
This is our opportunity. People
right.
have the you have the blessing of having folks care enough to fight about work. Holy crap. Let's use that. So,
Yeah.
instead of making it wrong, all we have to do is take the people who are doing this and facing off in conflict, turn them side by side so that they are pointed in the same direction, focused on a solution to the same problem. And
Yes.
half your job as the leader in the room is to get them to realize if you we used to call, I remember there was a really great course by a guy named Chris, I want to say Chris Anderson. It's called neuro associative programming class, and he used to talk about chunking up. So if you find yourself fighting at a level like about a thing, there is some deep seated value that
Mm,
is being neglected or repressed in one or both of the people at play. So what he would say is chunk up. So if you see that there is some detail that folks are butting heads about, it's important first to have folks realize that at a more abstract level, they both want the same thing. They just don't want it in the same way or through the same vehicle.
mm,
And if you can get them to appreciate a shared, congruent, desired outcome, no matter how abstract you have to go, they get to that point, and all of a sudden you begin to turn them from being adversarial to focusing on something external that they get to take their passions and work on potentially together and with
yeah.
other people.
The analogy that I use for this that really has had meaning for me, not just in an abstract fashion, no, it's actually kind of changed my behavior at moments where I may start to get triggered and gnashing in at another person, is to think of the disagreement, think of the problem that we're trying to resolve, to think of that as a jigsaw puzzle, and just like you say, face in the same direction, sit on the same side of the table. Well, look at the box. What is the picture we're trying to complete? And now look at the moving pieces with this shared goal in mind. Okay, now let's figure out.
And you've got
Now we
all
can,
the energy and the passion and the frustration that was available 5 minutes ago can now be redirected.
and we can constructively argue about where
Yes.
do the pieces fit.
As long as you and I have now agreed in abstract, this is one way of saying it. There are other spiritual ways of approaching this that are much more soul satisfying, but this is a business conversation, so we're going to do that today. But the idea is that, you know what, the people relating in the room, you know, I have often started meetings with the following: let us please remember that we are effectively 85-year bound organisms that are stuck on a blue rock hurtling through the darkness of space, consistently surrounded by nothing but death. What is the first agenda on the meeting that we have today? When we remember this is an 85-year run. You might live to 100. Chances are the years between 86 and 100 are probably going to be spent not as active, not as outside, not as engaged, right? So when the perspective of recognizing that whatever it is we are caring about has such little importance in the grand scheme of anything happening anywhere in the universe. Yes, this is not to belittle the challenge that you have in front of you, but it is appropriate to contextualize it. That
Mm-hmm.
if you are climbing up on a hill yourself and dying about a certain objective or a certain topic, where you would be better served simply mimicking air and flowing around it,
Mm-hmm.
or mimicking water and rolling with it, or fighting because that's the thing to do because that's how you're going to spend your time. I don't
And,
know.
and,
I don't know
and
what the
if
right
you
answer is. You're just not going to bring resistance to it and be a jerk while you do it. That's all.
and if you decide to mimic air or mimic water and to flow around it today,
Mhm.
that is a form of resolution if you do it consciously and say, this is a problem for another day. We're going to agree to set it aside. We're going to agree to set it aside is different from let's agree to disagree.
Well, and
We'll
absolutely.
agree to go your way for the next year and then revisit this question, or for the next week and then we'll revisit this question. A perfectly adequate resolution.
This is the image that comes to mind. Yes, I understand that you dropped the glass. Let's get out of the house that's on fire first. Let's
Yeah,
talk about it on the lawn outside, right?
right.
Let's get through this crap, whatever this is, and understood. We have something that we need. We're not going to put off
Mm.
irresponsibly that which must have some kind of congruent resolution moving forward. The other thing that I have been taught, because I have been a person that likes to solve problems, likes it. Very important to have hard conversations and get in people's faces about stuff that's unresolved. That's me. And what I've learned, because of course this is what fate likes to do to us, is that, okay, well, I'm going to give you a couple of problems that you can't solve. That if you come at people in hard ways, I'm going to put the kinds of people in your life that when you try to have direct, hard conversations, just the act will shut them down.
Mm.
And they are not going to budge and they are not going to yield and they are not going to be malicious about it. I don't know if you've ever argued with someone that is on the spectrum of neurodivergence, but there are folks in my life now that do not play by those, and they're some of the most beautiful human beings I have ever had the blessing of being around, but they don't respond to management tactics and to yes anding and to they don't respond to any of it. They shut down and they are in their emotions and they have a completely different set of value systems that are not necessarily my own. And part of the experience has been to learn how to lead, engage, inspire, and connect with them as they need it. Not as how I want it, but as
Mm.
they need it for us to achieve congruence. And it requires that I recognize that not everything I call a problem that requires a resolution actually does.
Mm.
There is an ancient art, ancient Chinese art, that's called Wei Wu Wei. It translates to do by not doing. And it's the act of intentionally not acting and seeing how your problems can transform and evolve with conscious non action,
Mm.
which is also another tool in the toolkit. And so you get to be responsible. You get to take action. You get to influence where you can. You get to surrender where you have to.
Yeah.
And all of it is in there. And the only thing we are asking you to do is give yourself grace and not be an asshole. That's it.
I'm not a sports fan. Although I enjoy watching sports most of the time when it happens, I almost never seek out watching sports, and still somehow the image that came to my mind as you were talking about Wei Wu Wei, that
Mm,
do by not doing, is the referee at a hockey game,
okay.
right? The people get into a fight, and clearly the referee is going to have to break up this fight. And the referee does nothing until the fight brings them down to the ice. right? It's only once they are down on the ice that the referee will get in and pull people apart, because to get
Bad things can
involved while
happen.
they're still standing could could injure them. And so, the going
Uh,
down to the ice is inevitable. I will let this happen until it is safe for me to intervene.
sure. I've not heard as practical an application, and it will stick with me now indefinitely. That was delightful. That was delightful. Yes. Yes. And so the second part, let's talk about it. So I think we have exhausted whatever, right?
Hmm.
Whatever is useful because it's the penultimate step to uh, completely resigned consilience, where
Hmm.
someone will just simply act because they are told to, because they have no more energy left to invest, and now they have no investment in the outcome.
Well,
That is the worst case in my
there's
mind.
another common uh, outplay of whatever in the workplace, which is, particularly if you have power, role power over me,
Hmm.
you say, we're in a disagreement about how X or Y should function, and you are insistent upon your way. I feel as if there is nothing, or I believe rather, that there is nothing that I can do that is going to get you to see the light. You refuse to listen. All the story that I'm telling myself. And so what I say to you is whatever. And what I plan to do is then to leave this meeting and go do what I believe is correct.
Or whatever is next. Not even what is if you do what is correct, then you still have an ounce of resistance and are still able to be redeemed.
Absolutely, which doesn't mean that I haven't said whatever, right? So there's the form and function and outplay of whatever that you talked about, this penultimate step. There's also the whatever that is about dismissing you in order to have steal my freedom.
I don't see a difference between the two. I have equated what you just
Yes.
described with what I just said.
So
What I'm
where
what Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was going to say what comes next is what matters. So
Mm,
when you find the whatever giver, once the whatever giver goes to the last place where they go from, remember, whatever is the screaming cry of the last ounce of resistance before disillusionment sets in. This is how we're framing it. Is this the truth? No, it's a model, but this is how we're modeling it today. If the idea is I say whatever and I go do something else, and that something else is congruent with what I feel is right, that's still up. You still have enough energy to fight. You're still fighting. You're just not fighting me to my face right this minute.
right.
Where this gets truly, truly dangerous, and I mean like culture eroding dangerous, is where, as a leader, I have created an environment that is so toxic that someone feels so shut down that they are now a husk of a human being that's a protraction of the job they're supposed to do.
And so
And
that is an explanation for, and I think this is a story that I read in another Simon Sinek book, Leaders Eat Last, where the surgeon the walks into the operating room where someone needs heart surgery and amputates his left leg.
right,
All the while, the nurses know this is a cardiac patient. Here comes the orthopedist. The orthopedist is scrubbed in. The orthopedist is about to make an incision in this person's leg. This person is having their leg amputated when, in fact, what they need is open heart surgery. The nurses all know that that's what's happening, and they are neurochemically handcuffed by fear and resignation that they cannot affect the outcome, and they are in by chemicals inhibited from speaking, even to save this poor man's leg.
and what I'm telling you is that has taken us past whatever, because
Way beyond.
whatever is not even in play anymore. We're not even at the store. We are,
Whatever happened, there were times,
yeah, like we have
days,
stopped
months, years
resisting.
ago.
And what I want to tell you, and this is the thing that a lot of leaders feel like and it's interesting how we handle resistance in our lives, right? If I don't agree with you, it is very seductive to somehow label conflict as bad.
Mm.
I offer to you the idea that somebody offering you resistance, and there are levels of resistance. There are healthy levels of resistance where I say one thing, you don't agree with it, you say something sloppy, I beat you up over it, then you hit me back with something that causes me to think for 2 weeks, or I come back. And then this is how people grow and evolve. And if you don't cast any of that as wrong, you have a healthy, engaged, productive, challenging, evolving connection with this other person and with yourself, because you're thinking and you're growing and you're challenging ideas. I've often told you, I love when you send me ideas that bother me, when you write things that I think are garbage and I have to fight you online. And I love them because what they do is it causes me to challenge. And I think you're a very smart person. So when you write something I don't agree with that bothers me, it causes me to clarify my thinking. It causes me to dig deep in myself and go, you know what do I actually believe about blah? Or is there a model that I'm having that's breaking down? What is it about this concept that is so internally corrosive? What's happening here? And it causes evolution and growth. And by golly, don't you want that? Don't you want resistance, evolution, and growth, however you can get it? So, in my mind's eye, that's the role of conflict.
Mm.
Conflict is there to grow us up, it's there to have us play. I used to love to handle the angriest customers in my retail store when I was in my late 20s, and I worked retail in North Carolina. And I used to enjoy handling the angriest customers that would come in because they had been waiting on the phone and they didn't get help and da, da, da. And it was always a challenge to have them be heard,
Mm.
recognize, understand,
Mm.
underscore, punctuate their humanity, if you will. Have them know, I see you, I hear you, you matter. I might not even be able to solve their problem. Their problem might have been unsolvable. But what we got to the end of most people's engagement didn't always happen. And, for everybody else, we called the police and they went to jail. But the idea, I'm not actually kidding. The idea was, however, that if they uh, were able to be listened to have their humanity understood, and to have them be seen, whether you're doing that for your kids or you're doing that for your employees or you're doing that for your relatives or you're doing that for your contractors or your customers, the ability to listen to them and give them the space to walk around in their own humanity, even for a few seconds.
Mm.
We get back to that abstract place where we turn shoulder to shoulder, and now there is some external process, some external problem, some external challenge that we as fellow blades of grass get to take on together.
Mm.
And
Well,
that's the
you and I met when Sage Intact Software asked me to train, and the Yes Works to train uh, uh, over the course of a year and a half or so. I think 400 some. Can you hear me? I lost something for a second. So we were training consultants who were going into companies to implement this software that not everybody wanted to have there. And as I've asked over the years, people who went through that training, what's been most powerful for you? What's been most useful for you? A lot of people have answered this operationalized professional compassion. It's these 4 steps that we give people for just that. The you can make progress with bringing your influence forward and your expertise forward in many cases only once you've really run through an operation that will reflect to this person that you have heard and valued what they have to say. Because otherwise, it may seem as if they are fighting for their position, when in fact, all they are really fighting for is to know that they have been seen and valued and heard and understood.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because what happens is that's how you buy goodwill.
Mm,
It's how you buy
right.
goodwill. And it's
It,
and
it,
I have to be careful because it's not transactional. Say a lot of people hear that and they hear a tactic. Ooh, I'm
mm,
gonna go buy some goodwill by telling people what they or sitting quietly and pretending to listen to them while I practice all the stuff I'm thinking about in my own head. No, sadly, the only way up is through. Yes, if you want to be successful, I know all this is gonna sound woo woo and completely, softy, mamby pamby, and we have a lot of examples right now where people who don't behave this way are winning in the world. Here, I hear you. At the same time, this is a fight for your own development and your own soul. And you do not authentically engage other people's goodwill and happiness and collect connection, true connection with other people without being authentic to the connection that you are looking to develop. Like you cannot fake this. This is not about yes anding as a strategy. It is yes anding from your soul first and bringing it into your everyday behavior.
I think it does work both ways. And is it Robert Cialdini, I think, who wrote the book
Is
Influence,
yes,
right?
influence is
And
Chaldean. Hmm.
he says essentially you can use this for good or you can use it for evil. It's up to you. I think he says, I hope that you will use it for good. Uh, and I think there's a step between the leaving them feeling heard and building the goodwill. The door is closed until you can demonstrate to them that you've heard and that you've understood. Then the door is open to the potential for goodwill. After that, it's the what's in it for me. Answering that question, I think, is going to be what starts to really build goodwill from a neutral ground. Until then, it's just they're a closed vessel.
Well, that wasn't even the point I was making, but okay, we'll take it. I was talking about the purveyor of because I'm imagining in my head somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, that's a cool strategy, that's a cool idea.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what I want to try to impart is yes, there are tactics here that we're talking about.
Mm.
Somebody is sharing with you, want to sell them something, and again, you're always selling, right? If it's an employee that is trying to take on a project and you need this thing to get done, yes, you are paying them, but you are selling the idea that they're going to do an incredible job with this and make this their own in a sustainable, ethical way that they can passionately engage. And the more passion they put into it with the most amount of attention, where they're not, lollygagging or splitting their attention with five other things, the higher the probability that they will deliver a result in excellence, which is what we want as service providers in a competitive environment. All that's true. Uh, so you're selling, you're always selling. And what becomes important, I think we live in a place where you can smell inauthenticity a mile away now. You know, gone are the days where you could hide behind emails and you could hide behind closed systems that did not expose and did not have other people connected to you. But you live on referrals. And what you need to have a business that, well, again, clearly I'm not Walmart, but for the rest of us, for the rest of us who run smaller companies that live in niches, you don't. ultimately dominate your industry for a decade or more by being someone other folks can't trust to hear you, no matter who you are, what you're, and whoever you're talking to. And so that's my point is you can hear tactics, but also recognize that there is a cry for you to take yourself on as a leader
Hmm.
and a cry for you to live into really opening the opportunity to connect with the person that needs to be heard.
Well, what's
So you're
coming up for me as you're describing that, is actually taking this operationalized professional compassion, these 4 steps that we taught these implementers and other folks since then as well. I've taken that into my marriage, and the cue for me that I need to take this into my marriage is when I feel convictedly right about something that my wife and I are disagreeing about, and
mm-hmm.
I think she's out to lunch. That's my cue to go, okay. And I should come up with an earlier cue, right? Because I'm down the garden path of fair distance by that point.
Oh, that's
But
funny.
when there are 2 things that I need to do, I find. One is to open my heart,
Mm,
and the other is to run this operation, go through these 4 steps. And I find it often difficult to start with the open heart, right?
yeah.
Is that it's by going, all right, let me employ this thing that I know is useful for breaking a log jam and start down this operation of compassion that could just be a tactic. And
Well,
what I find that happens that is kind of magical
mm,
is that when I do this and also intend that or remind myself if need be, and keep front of mind, I love this person,
mhm.
is that I then, by running this operation, begin to feel the compassion, and that rips my heart wide open, and the log jam is done, and information that's more instructive starts to flow.
You've just inspired a thought. I don't mean to give you advice, so I'm going to ask your permission if I'm allowed to at least make a comment for your consideration.
Well, like I'm not very well gonna in public say no, so go for it.
I think that it is overly ambitious to start with open your heart as a moving objective. I think that's a
Yeah,
lot.
right.
I think that's
It's
a
not
lot.
necessarily something that in a triggered state or an upset, frustrated state, I can consciously do. What I can consciously do is run the operation. Okay, it starts with observing, right? Like I
Well,
notice
so
this
let's
is
let's go
happening.
back there because there's a lot to that. So that is powerful. Andy Andrews writes a really soft, kind book called The Noticer that I read maybe a decade or two ago that was kind of in this realm. That noticing is a powerful skill, more powerful sometimes than any action you can take. The advice I was trying not to give you is as follows. Uh, I'm glad that you still find me entertaining after all these years. Breathing.
Mm.
If you can set aside the expectation that you're going to be this right, righteous human being, because it's tough to take yourself on. I know for me, I'm very convicted and I
Mm.
stop people from being confused all day long. That is my job. My job is I might present myself as a data migrator. I might present myself as a problem solver and blah blah blah. No, I am a confusion and chaos warrior. And my job is to be a place where chaos fades away. It's my only job all day long. Just having people not be confused, having them not act out of confusion. That's it. If you boil it down, we're clarifying thinking, we're explaining concepts, we're making sure that people aren't stepping into the void and being swept out to sea. That's all we're doing all day long. And whether I'm doing it internally with my team because they get confused, or I'm doing it myself, or I'm doing it for other people. That's all I'm doing all day long, just confusion and chaos at bay. However, I get to be aware and make space for the very real, non trivial probability that I could be wrong
Mm.
in whatever I'm saying next, even what I'm saying now. And that for me, because again, I have spent 25 years, I spent 40 years almost being the best at whatever it is I was doing, right? So I have very strong ideas and very powerful self image and blah, 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 until I get my ass handed to me and I'm, picking up my teeth from the floor, right? So that's how that works. What comes back, however, is the softness of the reality that a good breath provides. The nothingness that it takes. Because for a moment, you aren't being expected to fill any roles, to achieve anything. And I feel like so much work is put into work. And when we're actually working, we're not doing that much.
Mm.
Instead, now we just get to breathe. We get to just take a breath. And from that breath, the awareness of the other, the awareness of compassion, the awareness of focus, the awareness of being able to realign our objectives to come to some. What are we really fighting about? I mean, how awesome is it that we both feel so strongly about something that we are willing to argue as if our lives depend on
Mm.
it? What a gift. What a gift to have
Tremendous.
that much energy. And we both feel that way to the point where we're screaming and yelling and going on and blah, 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 blah. Oh my God, what a blessing. And the breath allows for a slight perspective where wherever I have been, whatever's been going on, we're not going to make any of it wrong, because what a wonderful way to get to this point where we're taking this breath with this grace. What are your thoughts?
Well, if there was advice that I had in my mind that I hoped to leave the viewers with, I think what you just said really makes the advice that I might give so much easier,
Mm.
because we see conflict as such a negative. We see conflict as something that is so challenging with a capital C
Mm.
and threatening of our very existence, threatening potentially of our companies that we've worked so hard to build.
Yes.
Every few weeks, Hugh, I do what I call a leaders leverage call, and I invite leaders of companies to come together on Zoom and talk through some issue, and I prompt it with some title, some concept, some subject of leading people.
Mm.
And last week, the topic was, you really need to be encouraging more conflict on your team, and let's talk about why, and let's talk about how. And usually there are 8 to 10 people on this call, and on that day there were 2.
Oh
and
wow.
I
Okay.
and I said to them, well, apparently you two are the folks who are not conflict avoidant. And so this message of yours, that our willingness and ability to come to this with so much energy and
Mm.
so much spirit and so much passion that we're willing to take the gloves off and go to the mattresses about this, that really is a gift. And so that leads me to the one bit of guidance that I thought I would come out with, and here's my opportunity. Don't leave conflict unresolved.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much opportunity for conflict that every conflict that we leave unresolved becomes a mass. And I think of, the like cows lick themselves, and they develop these giant balls of hair. And cow hairs are not big things. They are small, and you can come up with this giant ball of hair in the gut of a cow by not resolving these licked and swallowed hairs. And so not every conflict is going to have a solution. Every conflict can have a today resolution. And my encouragement is go there. Go there into the conflict, look it deep in the eyes, and find a, if not permanent, and very probably there aren't any permanent resolutions, find at least a temporary, deliberate, mutually agreed upon resolution so that you can put it behind you and focus on the present.
And if I were to give my 2 cents, I would tell you that the conflict scenario is normally a beautiful place for another adventure to start.
Mm.
And if we look at the conflict as an opportunity for us to focus on a shared inspiration, because we clearly feel passionate enough to be in conflict about something, so that let's turn shoulder to shoulder and take on that thing together, and the solution takes us somewhere magical.
Mm.
The harder the better.
Every breakthrough that you've been looking for in your organization is very likely on the other side of a conflict.
The only thing wrong with your statement is very likely. Yeah.
All right.
Love
Well,
you,
I think that's a wonderful place to wrap it up, Hugh. As always, it's fun to both dance and joust with you.
Sure. My pleasure as always. And it proves the point. How many times have I busted your chops for something or the other? You have been kind enough to heed my words. And the only reason we are hanging out now is because I would come to your classes and cause all kinds of trouble and you didn't kick me out. It
It's
worked
because
out
I.
perfectly. Yeah, exactly. There are
Yeah.
people to this day that who will not speak to me from my class, from the
Yeah.
class I took
Well.
with you, because they find me to be the most abhorrent human being that walks on two legs. And, I would go in there and I would have very, very abrasive opinions on purpose, just to see what would happen, because why not?
Well.
But we came through it.
We came through it, and I'm very pleased to have you in my life, and I'm very pleased to share you with you who are with us for this episode, the 9th one of Leadership Uncertain. Go out there and have